which Islamic jurisprudence is being questioned left and right. I've seen kids asking, why is Islam all about haram and halal? Why does Allah care that much if I do this and if I do that? Why would the creator of the entire universe, the one who controls and coordinates each and every atom in existence, why would he care so much about whether I wear hijab or whether I don't wear hijab, or whether I walk in this manner and not in that manner? Why would he care if I say this and not that? There are a lot of people who are asking this very particular question, and I know a lot of people who deviate from this true path of Islam because of having unanswered questions in their minds. Now, there are certain things we need to understand about haram and halal, about usul al-fiqh, about the entire field of jurisprudence, and that's what we are going to do today, inshallah. But before directly going into the session, let me remind you a few things that I always do before directly going to the session. Make sure your intentions are clear. Make sure your intentions are pure. This is very, very important. This is very, very important. So if you have rectified your intention, say yes in the chat. Just have the intention that you're doing this solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're sitting here for the next 1 hour only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't care about anything else. That's the number one thing. Secondly, have a notebook with you. I hope you're all having a notebook with you. This is very, very important, because usually psychology says that your memory deteriorates within 3 to 5 days after you have attended a particular session. All right. So if you don't have your notes, you're obviously going to forget it. So you got to be really, really careful about that. All right. And the third important point is this: the amount of benefit you're going to get through the session. The amount of development you're going to get through the session will depend upon the way in which you interact with me. All right. Now we have a lot of people here. So what I'm expecting you is to respond to all the questions that I ask you in the chat. So make good use of the chat. This is very, very important. Make good use of the chat. This is very, very important. So the more you engage in the session with your conversations, you'll benefit a lot, inshallah. And don't use social media while in the session. An assignment task will be given. And don't turn on your audio. You can converse with me through the chat, inshallah. So with that, let's directly get into the session with an important question. What is haram and halal? What does haram mean and what does halal mean? Okay, what does haram mean? Let's ask one question at a time. What does haram mean? So one person says haram is forbidden. Okay, haram, which is not good for a fitrah, forbidden acts. All right. Okay, haram means something that is forbidden, something that is sinful, something that we should not be doing, right? Very simple. And what does halal mean? What does halal mean? What Allah has made permissible for us, something that is acceptable, something that is allowed, something that we can do, right? But does that mean we must do it? If something is halal, does that mean we must do it? No, it is not wajib. Wajib means something that we must do. For example, praying 5 times a day, it is wajib. You don't have an option there, all right? But eating ice cream, is it halal? Is it halal? Yes. But does that mean you should be eating ice cream 24/7, 365 days a year? Because Allah has made it halal. I got to eat ice cream. No. No, halal doesn't mean like you must do it, right? Halal just means, okay, it's there. You can, or if you don't want to do, no problem, right? No problem. So that is what halal and haram means. Now we're going to be discussing this topic based on a very, very important hadith, all right? I want you guys to read this particular hadith along with me, all right? From An-Nu'man ibn Bashir radiyallahu anhu said that I heard Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam say, that which is lawful is clear, and that which is forbidden is clear, and between them are doubtful matters about which many of the people have no knowledge. So whoever avoids doubtful matters saves his religion and saves his honor. And whoever falls into doubtful matters, falls into what is forbidden. Just like a shepherd who grazes his sheep near a private pasture of another, he will soon stray onto it. Indeed, for every king there is a private preserve. Indeed, the preserve of Allah are those things which He has forbidden. Indeed, there is a piece of flesh in the body, which if it is good, then the whole body is good. If it is corrupt, then the whole body is corrupt. Indeed, it is the heart. Okay, if you have finished reading that, say yes in the chat. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to understand it completely, but if you have finished reading it, say yes in the chat. Okay. Now, this particular hadith talks about a very, very important confusion that the Muslim youth have these days. And we'll get into that discussion very soon, inshallah. But before that, let's analyze this hadith. Now, this hadith is very, very important. Some scholars say that the entire principles of deen revolves around this particular hadith. It might seem like a very simple hadith, right? But the scholars have done deeper research on this particular hadith, and they have gone to the extent to say that this hadith is so profound that the entire principles of deen revolves around this particular hadith. And we will explain why it is so. And this hadith is muttafaqun alayhi. What does muttafaqun alayhi mean? Does anyone know what muttafaqun alayhi means? Yes, muttafaqun alayhi means اتفق العلماء على هذا الحديث. وماذا تقصد بالعلماء؟ البخاري ومسلم. متفق عليه basically means agreed upon. And who agreed upon it? Like some random guy? No. The greatest scholars of hadith, Bukhari and Muslim, Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim has agreed upon this hadith, that this hadith is sahih. So this is like the highest degree of authenticity a hadith can get. All right. Now, this hadith actually addresses a believer's conscience. If you dig deeper, you can actually see elements of psychology in this particular hadith. What should the mindset of a Muslim be when it comes to living his life, and when it comes to making the choices between haram and halal? And today we live in a world wherein which haram has become so prevalent that is getting really, really hard to avoid it. My dear brothers and sisters, you're always going to have a choice. You're always going to have a choice. It's either going to be haram or halal. And you will have to make a decision that will take a lot of iman. You'll have to take a decision that will test the quality of your iman. Now, to get the basics correct, haram means something that is prohibited and halal means something that is lawful. There's a mistake here, like it's supposed to be the opposite, all right? Haram means something that is prohibited, and halal means something that is lawful. We all know this, it's very clear. Now, this great hadith leads us to mention a number of rules concerning the Muslim's behavior and conduct individually in society. Now, before directly going that, let me ask you a few questions so that, I can be sure that the basics are there. Is eating pork halal or haram? Eating pork halal or haram? Okay, strictly forbidden, haram. All right. What about taking heroin or cocaine? What about taking cocaine? How can you say that cocaine is haram? I mean, if you look into the Holy Quran, like you don't really see that word. Like, is cocaine present in the Holy Quran? No, right? So it's based on a principle. Intoxications. Al-khamru wal-maysiru wal-azlamu wal-azlamu rijzun min a'mal shaitan fajtanibuhu la'allakum. Very good. So intoxications, right? So intoxications are haram. So based on that, what cocaine is haram. Okay, let me ask you another question. Is driving a car haram? Is driving a car haram? Okay, good answer. Now, let me be a bit more nuanced, asking a bit more nuanced questions. Is using makeup haram? Is using makeup haram? Okay, so we have got a few answers. Okay, so somebody's saying it's all right, somebody's saying it depends. All right. Now, have you heard about the term ikhtilaf? Ikhtilaf. What does ikhtilaf mean? Ikhtilaf. Very good. Ikhtilaf means difference of opinion. All right. For example, here, when I study the book Fiqh al-Muyassar fi Dawi al-Kitabi wa Sunnah. So it's basically, a very simple compendium of what is haram and what is halal. It's a book that was written by multiple scholars. And it's mostly focusing on the Masalat al-Hanabila. Anyway, so this particular book, like when we discuss this book, the teacher who's teaching me this book is actually someone who has studied multiple madhahibs, right? So when he is teaching one mas'ala, for example, let me give you an example. For example, what breaks the fasting, right? When he's talking about that, he's talking about certain things and he'll say, اختلف العلماء إلى قولين or اختلف العلماء إلى ثلاثة أقوال, etc. So he uses this particular term very often. اختلف العلماء, اختلف العلماء. So اختلف العلماء basically means the scholars have differed in opinions. All right. The scholars have differed in opinion. All right. Now there are very clear-cut things that are haram and there are very clear-cut things that are halal, but there are a few things where the scholars have differed. That is what we call اختلف العلماء. اختلف العلماء. Got it? Is that clear? If that is clear, say yes in the chat. So اختلف العلماء means the scholars have differed in their opinion with regards to that particular topic. All right. Now, the branch of Islamic science that deals with the haram and halal, does anyone know what that branch is? What that branch is called? Very good. It is called as al-fiqh, right? Al-fiqh, the branch of fiqh. The principles of fiqh are called as usul fiqh. I'm just trying to give you like basic information so that, we have a clear idea of what fiqh is. Now, fiqh, the basic definition that scholars give to fiqh is al-ilmu bil-ahkam al-shar'iyyah al-amaliyyah al-muktasaba min adillatiha al-tafsiliyah. وقد يطلق الفقه على الأحكام نفسها, which basically means العلم بالأحكام الشرعية. Fiqh basically is the knowledge of the ahkam of sharia, like what to do, what not to do, the ritualistic things, how to do it, how to pray. So the branch of fiqh is very, very important, very, very important in fiqh. Now let me ask you another question. How do we know something is haram and something is halal? Like, do we just accept it if somebody in the street came to you and said this is haram? Is that how we determine what is haram? Like you're just standing there and somebody just came, this is haram, and you just accept it? No, right? No. So fiqh has, roots and sources. Masadir al-fiqh. Masadir al-fiqh basically means sources of fiqh. What are the sources of fiqh? Number one, we all know the first source, right? What is the number one source? The number one source is the Quran al-Kareem. All right? Al-Quran al-Kareem, the Holy Quran is the first principle, or the first source, or the first reference. The second reference is as-Sunnah al-Mutahhara, al-Muqaddasa, the holy Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the ahadith, the sayings and the doings of the Prophet ﷺ. The third is al-Ijma', and the fourth is al-Qiyas. All right. Now, I don't wish to go into the depth of fiqh at the moment, but I just wanted to give you a basic idea of what the fiqh is, and what is the importance of haram and halal. Now, is Islam all about haram and halal? Is Islam all about haram and halal? No. And this is a huge confusion that a lot of youngsters have. They just think that Islam is about halal and haram. Of course, halal and haram is a very, very important aspect of Islam. But Islam is not only about halal and haram. Islam is not just about halal and haram. There are 6,236 verses in the Holy Quran. The verses that talk about halal and haram is just 10 to 15. It's just 10 to 15. The rest of the verses, they talk about a lot of important moral, a lot of important lessons, a lot of important lessons. They talk about the akhirah, they talk about the qiyamah, they talk about a lot of different things. Islam is not just about haram and halal. And this points towards the way we teach religion to our kids. The Prophet ﷺ, when Allah revealed the Quran to him, did the Prophet ﷺ directly go to the people and say, this is haram, this is halal. You're not supposed to drink alcohol, it is haram. You have to do this because this is halal. You have to stop that because it's haram. You have to do this because it's halal. Did the Prophet ﷺ do that? No. He basically gave them the fundamental essence of spirituality and divinity in Islam. And that is who Allah is, why you need to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the characteristics of Allah, so the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ first taught them the aqidah. Aqidah. What is aqidah? Aqidah basically means, who is your Rabb? Who is your Lord? Why should you worship the only one? Why should you worship the only one God and not worship the other idols? So Tawheed, that belief, that was the essence that the Prophet ﷺ taught for the first many years. And when that is there, then, after that, like in the Madani phase of the Seerah, like we learn about haram and halal and all these things. So that haram and halal should be built upon aqidah, should be built upon that firm base in aqidah. When we understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, that is when we are going to significantly take haram and halal seriously, right? For a lot of people, I've seen a lot of youth, when they ask questions like, why should I not do haram and why should I not do halal? If you just dig in a bit deeper, like if you just sit in a counseling session with them and talk to them, very comfortably, maybe for 30 minutes or an hour, like you can clearly see their aqidah is problematic. They don't even believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't even believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like they have, internal doubts about whether the Prophet ﷺ is a prophet, right? So if that is not clear, then, regardless of how much we say this is haram or how much we say this is halal, it's not going to make sense to them. And this is why I say, like, we need to really fine tune our da'wah methodology. If you see a woman who is not wearing hijab, like first, before you prove to her that it's haram, like this is halal and this is wajib and this is that, of course it needs to be done. But before that, like you need to check whether this person believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. They believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. And there used to be, I don't wish to name that person, there used to be a particular teacher in our college, and I don't wish to name the department too. And this teacher, she's a very good teacher. She teaches very well. But the problem is she doesn't wear hijab. She's not that into religion, I would say. Now, I do remember, when a particular speaker came to our college to speak about a particular topic, she stood up and she asked a question, right? She stood up and she asked a question, and the speaker gave an answer that was based on rationality and, a lot of these things. And the teacher, like, she did not accept the answer. She just walked out of the room. I think I was studying in first year or second year. Now, I just asked myself, like, why is it so hard to accept these things? I mean, it's very clear. For a person who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the Lord of mankind say that this is haram, of course, like, we have to believe it. Like, I was honestly confused. Like, why is she behaving in that manner? And right before, I exited from the college, like, I took my TZ. I think I had about 20 days to go to Egypt. So before that, I was visiting a lot of these teachers and talking to them, getting to know their perspectives and, getting their advices. And it's always good to get nasiha, to get advices from your elders. So I was going to meet these different teachers, and I walked into that department. I talked to the teacher, and I was honestly shocked because, her claim was that the Holy Quran is not, like, it's not correct. The Holy Quran was written by a man named Bukhari, and she didn't say Bukhari, she said Bukhari. I hope she was referring to Bukhari. She says the Holy Quran was written by a man named Bukhari 300 years after the Prophet died. And I just kept my hand on my head, like, what in the world are you talking about? Like, subhanallah, what are you saying? Right? So talking to her about haram and halal, like, that is not the way it should be done. Right? First, we have to get her aqidah straight. Like, we have to prove to her that God exists. We have to prove to her that the Holy Quran is correct. Right? So that is a fundamental thing. Like, that is a fundamental thing. And once that is there, once that is there, then the Holy Quran will start making sense to you. Then haram and halal will start making sense to you. Like, this is very, very important. Now, another question I would like to ask is, and with this question, we'll continue on with that discussion. I don't wish to go, technical on these particular issues because, I know that I'm addressing a general audience and not tulab al-ilm. So I'll not be getting into the deeper details, but, I just wanted to, give you a general idea. Now, the Holy Quran says, "Aqim as-salah," right? When the sister, like, she was reciting the Holy Quran at the start of the session, there was a word "Aqim as-salat," right? "Aqim as-salah." So the Holy Quran says you have to pray, you have to maintain your prayer consistently. But the Holy Quran, does it teach how to pray? Does the Holy Quran teach how to pray? No. So where do we get how to pray? So where do we get how to pray? From the hadith, from the sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." Pray as I showed you how it should be prayed. Right? So from the hadith. Now this actually exposes a lot of people a branch called as Quraniyun. Quraniyun are the people who say we only care about the Quran, nothing matters. The hadith, it's all da'if. The sunnah, it's all da'if. The entire Islamic intellectual tradition, it's all problematic. We don't need to believe in that. We only need to believe in the Holy Quran. In English they're called Quranis. In Arabic they're called as Quraniyun, al-Quraniyun. So that is also a very, very problematic take, because when you remove the sunnah, you basically remove the backbone. So when you remove the backbone, it gives you leverage to do anything you want. It gives you leverage to do anything you want. The Orientalists were the people who very much emphasized on it, and very sadly, a lot of Muslims fall into this trap, and they say we don't need to pray 5 times, we only need to pray 3 times, etc. They come with bizarre, claims. So we need to stick to the Holy Quran and the Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ has said, "Taraktu fikum amrayni lan tadillu ma tamassaktum bihima, kitab Allahi wa sunnata rasulih." Kitab Allahi wa sunnata rasulih. What does that mean? The Prophet ﷺ is saying, I have left you with 2 things. Taraktu fikum amrayn lan tadillu ma tamassaktum bihima. If you hold on to it, you will never lose your path. Does anyone know what these 2 things are? Quran and Hadith, right? Al-Quran and Hadith. Taraktu fikum amrayni lan tadillu ma tamassaktum bihima. I'm leaving you with 2 things. If you hold on to these 2 things, you will never deviate from the path. Al-Quran wa Sunnah, right? Kitab Allahi wa sunnata rasulih. So we have to stick to the Quran and the Sunnah, regardless of what matters come up. If somebody comes up and says this is haram, this is halal, you have to say, "Qul hatu burhanakum." Qul hatu burhanakum. Bring your proofs. You can't just make everything haram because you don't like it. You can't make everything halal because you like it. And this points towards 2 paradigms. One paradigm is the liberal paradigm, where they try to make everything halal, and the other paradigm is the extremist paradigm, where they try to make everything haram, right? Everything haram, right? So now we get into a deeper topic. I don't wish to go there because it'll take a lot of time to have a proper discussion on that. Okay. So as we said, this great hadith actually leads us to mention a number of rules concerning the Muslims' behavior and conduct individually in society. Among them are, number 1, haram and halal is very clear. Al-halalu bayyinun wal-haramu wadihun. The halal is clear and the haram is clear. It's very clear. This is very clear. I mean, drinking alcohol, is it haram or halal? Drinking alcohol, is it haram or halal? It's very clear. There is no ikhtilaf. It's very clear. It is clearly haram. And if you look at the field of fiqh, a lot of it, majority of the things, everyone agrees on it, right? Some people, due to not having an understanding of what fiqh is, and they get into nuanced discussions of fiqh about haram and halal, they think that everything has ikhtilaf. No, everything doesn't have ikhtilaf. Everything doesn't have ikhtilaf. Majority of the things, it's very clear, it's set in stone. It's very clear, it's set in stone, right? A lot of people use the excuse of ikhtilaf. We'll get to that particular topic very soon, inshallah. So Islam has a clear code of conduct. Because it is guidance. It is hidayah, it is a guidance. And it is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is having a code in life a bad thing? Is having a structure in life a bad thing? No, absolutely no. It's the best thing. It's the best thing. And having a structure in life is actually one of the secrets, keys of success, not only professionally, not only academically, but in all aspects. But in all aspects. You know, I think it was 6 months or 7 months. I don't remember exactly. You know, I lived in an Egyptian village called as Subkul Ahad fil Manufia. So Manufia is actually the province, and the place is called as Subkul Ahad, and it's almost like, you know, an Egyptian village. I was sitting under a scholar, and a lot of people from across the world, they come there to learn about Islam, etc., to learn under the great mashayikhs of Misr. Now, and the funny thing was, like, I was the only Indian guy, like, in the entire province. So, you know, being an Indian was, you know, something that was very, like, people would look at you, whoa, you're an Indian, right? The only thing they know about India is that, you know, there are a lot of elephants in India. A lot of people used to ask me, like, how many elephants are there, like, around your home? Like, it's pretty funny. Anyway, so there I met a lot of different people, and one of the things that I particularly did was, you know, being a student of psychology, I was very curious to learn about the lifestyles of different people, how they lived, etc., their backstory. So I used to meet a lot of people, and, you know, I used to learn about their life, and I used to take moral lessons from them. And there was a particular guy, like, I met in a restaurant, like, it was very, very accidental. So I went to a restaurant, I sat there, and there was another guy sitting beside me, and he was much older than me. I think he was in his late 30s. Now he, you know, like, we were waiting for food. And the other thing with Egypt, if anyone is coming here, you know, I can tell you, if an Egyptian guy tells you daqiqa wahid, like 1 minute, it is not 1 minute, it's 10 minutes, right? If they say 10 minutes, it's 30 minutes, right? So if they say that they will serve food in 10 minutes, it's 30 minutes. Right? So that's how the, you know, system here works. Pretty sure, like in Kerala too, like, it's not that different. Anyway, so this guy was sitting beside me, and, you know, it started to get a bit boring, because it's taking a lot of time to serve the food. And, you know, I struck up a conversation with him. Now, at that time, like, my Arabic was not that on point, so, you know, I had to, you know, speak in a bit of English too. So I started to ask him, like, where are you from, etc. And he was speaking English. I was surprised, because usually people from, you know, regional Scandinavian countries don't speak really good English, except, like, if you're from Britain, if you're from Scotland, etc., right? But he was from Holland, and usually Holland accent, like, it's very, like, you can clearly understand that it's, you know, he's from Holland. So, like, I was surprised, because he was speaking good English, and I asked him, like, what did you do in your life, like, etc., etc. And I was really shocked by hearing his story. I was really shocked by hearing his story. He spent his life, like, literally without any system to follow. He was born in an Orthodox Christian family, but then, you know, of course, like, you know, a lot of, you know, Hindus and Christians, since they don't have a clear-cut theology, all of them, or majority of them, they're just liberals. They're just liberals, right? So he just deviated from, you know, the Christian lifestyle. He started living a liberal atheist lifestyle, right? He started living a liberal atheist secular lifestyle. Religion doesn't mean anything to him. Religion doesn't mean anything to him. Now, he's basically, you know, going out, doing drugs, partying, having girlfriends, and all this, like, this kind of lifestyle. At the age of 18, like, he was caught. He went to the jail for breaking into someone's home to steal money to take drugs. All right. And then at the age of 21 too, I think he got into the jail the second time. I don't remember the details exactly. This was 7 to 8 months ago. And, like, he just lived that kind of lifestyle, right? That was the lifestyle he lived for a lot of years. He got depressed, like, he became extremely narcissistic. Like, he was just fed up of life. Like, he wanted to commit suicide. He just wanted to kill himself. Life had no meaning to him. And then, you know, finally, after learning a lot, after researching a lot, he came to understand Islam, and he accepted Islam. And then I asked him, what was the one thing that, you know, you found particularly profound about Islam? And you know what he said? He said, Islam had a structure. Islam gives structure to my life. You know, from waking up at any time I want and doing drugs and, you know, spending my time in nightclubs and just sleeping on the, you know, corridors of the nightclub till morning, Islam gave me a structure. I woke up early in the morning and I prayed to my creator. And I woke up fresh and I read the Holy Quran and I read the adhkar. SubhanAllah, it was so beautiful to him. Now this is where like I was very astonished. I was very astonished. If you ask an average liberal Muslim today about why you hate a lot of aspects of Islam, they would say the same answer. They would say it's the structure. And they have lost this appreciation for the structure. The structure is actually one of the most beautiful things about Islam. It gives you a clear code. If you need to understand the beauty of this, like you will have to look at it from an external perspective, from outside the box. And this guy, he has lived the lifestyle these liberals have lived, like the extreme liberal lifestyle. He has come to appreciate. He has come to appreciate the structure and beauty of Islam. So a Muslim has a life structure, unlike the hedonistic pursuers. Like we have a structure, what to do and what not to do. And everything what is not to do, like it'll destroy us if you do it. It's destroy us if you do it. Right? So Islam has a clear code. The things that are haram in Islam are haram for a reason. If you do that, like you destroy yourself. You destroy yourself, you destroy your peace, you destroy your mental state, you destroy your physical self. Depression hits you, anxiety is there. Allah has made them haram to protect you because He loves you. He loves you. Subhanallah. Your soul, your heart, just know that if you engage in something haram, you're going to be destroying yourself. There are a lot of kids, who commit a lot of things and they say, I don't understand why this is haram. And the other thing with our human intelligence is that it's always limited. It's always limited. Sometimes, like if you research, you may not understand the internal wisdom behind why some things are haram. For example, for a teenager, if you go to a teenager and if you tell them relationships are haram, some of them will accept it, but a lot of them will question, like, why are relationships haram? Like, what is a problem in this? Everyone is doing this. Everyone is going for dates. Right? But then the same guy, like when he reaches like his mid-20s and he has gone through multiple relationships and he has destroyed her, she has destroyed her heart, she has destroyed her peace, she has destroyed her trust in humanity, she has destroyed her soul, and she's in a broken state. And if you ask them the same question, now do you understand why relationships are haram? She'll say yes. She'll say yes. Right? So the thing is, our intelligence and our rationality is very limited. If you tell a little child why eating chocolates are very problematic, like he'll probably not understand it. For him, like it's just fun, like it's just tasty, right? But the more he grows, like he comes to understand. Similarly, a lot of things that are haram, a lot of things that are halal, we may not understand the wisdom completely. We may not get the wisdom completely. So we've got to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, there is a fundamental rule in fiqh, and that is everything is halal. All right? Everything is halal until proven haram. Everything is halal until proven haram. So, I mean, just look at the haram list. I mean, if you made a list of halal things and haram things, which list is going to be longer? Which list is going to be longer? If you made a list of halal things and haram things, which list is going to be like longer? Halal list is going to be like 100 times longer than the haram list. Then why are some people saying that everything is haram? Why do some people, feel that everything is haram? It is because we are living in a society where haram has become what? Very, very prevalent, very, very common, very, very common. So normally we say that everything is halal until proven until proven haram. Okay, there's a small mistake there. Everything is halal until proven haram, but it is the opposite for ibadah. It is the opposite for ibadah. When you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and somebody says that, okay, we can worship Allah in this way, then it is considered prohibited until you prove that it's halal, until you prove that it's correct, right? Imagine that some guy, with a big turban, he comes and says, the best way to worship Allah is to dance and, just revolve with music on, right? Like, would you just accept it? No, right? Like, we question it, like, what in the world is this? Why the world is this? I'm pointing to a certain group of people like who are increasing in number here in Kerala too, even in Egypt, like it has become very prevalent, right? So with regards to ibadah, we say everything is haram except you prove that it's halal, except that you prove that it's halal. Now, the path of haram will destroy you. This needs to be very, very clearly understood. All right. Loving haram things leads to pain and sufferings for which there is no way out. If you do haram, you're going to regret it in one way or the other, directly or indirectly. This is very, very clear. Like, have no doubt in this. Have no doubt in this. Regardless of what anyone says, like some people say, if you do this, like you'll have a lot of, health benefits. If you do that, like you'll have a lot of, better, betterment in your life in certain aspects. If you have some people saying that, and on the other side, Allah is saying something haram, which do you think you should be choosing? Which do you think you should be choosing? Should you be choosing what Allah says, or should you be choosing what the other people say? Maybe they're speaking from a scientific basis, etc. We choose what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. We clearly choose what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Because Allah is much more wiser than these people. He is the wisest. He's Al-Hakim, right? He's Al-Alim. He's the most knowledgeable. He's the most knowledgeable. And the thing with these scientific, narratives, like I know a lot of psychologists, like who point towards certain acts that are sinful in Islam, and they say that it's very good, it's very healthy. And the problem with these people is they have not, studied psychology very deeply. They might have a PhD, but getting a PhD these days, like, it's not that hard. Like, you just spend 5 years in research and you get a PhD. But that doesn't mean you have depth in the topic. I've met a lot of, PhD holders who are really idiotic and really stupid. Like, honestly, I've met a lot of people in this field. Like, just because you have a PhD doesn't mean you have very deep ghaya, you have very deep depth in the literature on this particular topic. This is the sad reality. Of course, like getting PhD, it gives you a bit more mastery over the subject, but that doesn't mean you have completely mastered the subject. And this trap that a lot of psychologists fall into is a proof of that. Like, there was a time when a particular act, they said that if you did it, like, it'll decrease your prostate cancer. It is very beneficial for you. It'll give you this and it'll give you that. But later on, they came up with another scientific research saying that this is completely wrong. It'll not give, like, the chance of prostate cancer will increase. It'll do this, it'll do that. And then after that, they came up with a research which contradicted the earlier research. And then after that, they came up with a research which contradicted the earlier research again. Like, this is the problem. I mean, if you depend upon this particular system of life, come on, like, you're just gonna destroy yourself. So with regards to what you need to follow, just stick to what is haram and what is halal. And if science wants to say something that is in support of what Islam says, of course, like, you can accept it. But if it opposes it, then trust the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Trust the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What we need to understand is a little haram is still haram. Okay, we did have a discussion on this in the last class as well. Some people say, like, come on, like, it's a small haram. It's a small haram. I mean, what is the meaning of haram? Haram means prohibited. Right? Haram means prohibited. Even if it is a little prohibited, it's a big prohibited, it's still prohibited. Right? Some people try to justify their sin saying that, like, come on, like, it's just a small thing. It's just a small thing. If something is haram, it's haram. Okay, it's wadah. It's wadah. If something is haram, we don't do it. Like, that's the fundamental rule. And devaluing the seriousness of haram is a great sin. It's a great sin. Don't devalue it. If you commit a sin, at least don't justify it. At least, like, the least you can do is not justify it. So be very, very careful. Be very, very careful. A little haram is also haram. And good intentions doesn't make it acceptable. Good intentions doesn't make haram acceptable, right? If you jump from a building with a good intention, would it break your bones? If you jump from a building with good intention, will it not break your bones? It will break your bones, right? It will break your bones. Right? Good intentions don't always make haram acceptable. And I know a lot of people who do a lot of things with good intentions, right? For example, when I speak to some liberals and some feminists, I can understand these people have good intentions. Like, they're not evil people. Like, there are people with good intentions. They want goodness for the society. But the problem is they don't have much depth with regards to certain things, and they're really ignorant of a lot of things, and they do a lot of things that are haram. But does good intentions make the haram acceptable? Does the good intentions make haram acceptable? What do you think? No, absolutely no. Good intentions doesn't make the haram acceptable, right? And that is the problem of the liberal society. The liberal society. Imagine, Adolf Hitler. Do you think he had good intentions? Adolf Hitler, he wanted to develop, the German nation, right? He had good intentions, but does that justify him killing 5 million Jews? Does that justify him killing 5 million Jews? The guy was evil. The guy was evil. Like, he did a big crime against humanity. So good intentions, like, a lot of people have good intentions, but that doesn't mean the things that you're doing is acceptable. All right. The thing that you're doing is acceptable. Now, haram is haram even if the whole world does it. Just understand this clearly. All right. Haram is haram even if the whole world does it. And halal is halal even if the whole world reprimands it. And we need to stick to this principle, and we need to drill this into our minds, because we live in a society, where it has become very, very hard to actually live a lifestyle where in which you stay away from haram. For example, in your college, like you clearly know that free mixing and going out, on dates and, jumping up and down and dancing with girls or, opposite gender is haram. But everyone is doing it. Does it mean like you can also do it? Does it mean you can also do it? A lot of people fall into this trap. And it's called as normalization and demoralization. Normalization and demoralization. There's a word in psychology, it's called as systematic desensitization. If you want, you can write it down. So it's basically systematic desensitization through normalization. It's systematic desensitization through normalization that is leading to demoralization. It's very simple. And that actually clearly explains a lot of these trends that we see in the society. The colleges, they have become liberal factories. The colleges, they have become liberal factories. A lot of people, and I've given the same example again and again in the previous classes too. A lot of people, they know something is wrong, but they have to do it because of peer pressure. Because everyone around them, they're doing it. If they don't do it, then they're going to be sidelined. How many of you have seen such people who changed their principles to just conform to the society? And this is a very, very sad reality. It's a very, very sad reality. We've got to be really, really careful. Because if you just engage in haram just to fit into society, who is finally going to be losing out from here? Who's destroying? Who's getting destroyed? Yourself. You're just destroying yourself. And the root of the problem is not you, but the root of the problem is, a specific thought in your mind that you always need to satisfy other people. Is that deeper thought in your mind, in your cognition, that says that I got to fit in for some reason. Why you got to fit in? You're unique. Allah created you unique. And why are you trying so hard to fit in? It's just like a fish wanting to fit in with the animals on the land, and trying to get onto the land. If the fish jumps out from the ocean to the land, who is getting killed here? Are the animals going to be affected? Who's getting killed here? Himself, the fish, right? The fish, if it just jumps out of the ocean to fit in with the animals, it's killing itself. It's killing itself. So we got to be very, very careful. Don't try to fit in. You don't need to fit in. You got to have that strength to open your mind and open your heart and say to the world that I don't care about what other people think. I don't care if they insult me. I don't care if they throw labels at me. I don't care about public opinion and social opposition. The only thing I care about is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks about me. The only thing that I care about is my akhirah. And nobody is going to be there for me when I am in the akhirah standing alone. You were born alone, you will die alone, and you will be in the qabr alone, and you will stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and you will have to answer for each and everything that you did alone. Even if you were pulled to that night party by your friends are not going to be there to help you when you're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the sun right above your head, and you're crying and you're weeping because of the sin that you have done. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Let's be really careful. And my dear brothers and sisters, I really fear for you, because a lot of people, the brain just conforms to the trends. That's how the brain works. We've got to fight against this. And that is why living in this world itself is a jihad. That's why we say, ad-dunya sijnul muslim. Ad-dunya sijnul muslim. The dunya is what? It is the prison of the believer. You'll have to meet a lot of these challenges, my dear brothers and sisters. So let's have this in mind. And tuba lil ghuraba, if you are considered as a strange person for going to pray, let them say it, no problem. Let them say it. If they find you strange, then let them call you strange, no problem. Because the Prophet ﷺ has given you a good tiding. Tuba lil ghuraba, glad tidings to the strangers. There's going to come a day in which you will stand in front of all the people that insulted you, And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you enter Jannah, the highest darajas of Jannah, while they will be calling out to you. Subhanallah, like it's a reality. Like there's no way we can deny this reality. It's part of our aqidah. Anyway, so what I'm saying is haram even if the whole world does it, and halal is halal even if the world reprimands it. All right? And stick to the halal. If you stick to the halal, Allah will give you a lot more. And with this, we are going to end, inshallah. Stick to the halal. If you stick to the halal, Allah will give you a lot more. Like the examples of this is unending. Like if you study history, if you study the lives of different people, like the examples of this, it's very prevalent. It's very prevalent. One of the greatest example is Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu was a person who led a very sinful life. I'm not degrading his personality as a Sahabi, but I'm just just narrating his biography. All right. So Umar radiallahu anhu, in his Jahiliyyah, he was a person who did a lot of sinful things. He drank alcohol, he was very unjust, etc. But after Umar radiallahu anhu, he became a Muslim. Who did Allah make him? When Umar radiallahu anhu was dying, he was one of the most powerful people on the planet at that time. One of the most powerful people on that planet at that time. Like he had 20 physical kingdoms in his hand. That's how powerful Umar radiallahu anhu was. Like even like if you look at countries today, the United States, Russia, and all these countries, like Umar radiallahu anhu had more power than them. Umar radiallahu anhu had more power than them because he had amassed or conquered, a vast majority of planet Earth at that time. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. So Umar radiallahu anhu was very powerful. And Allah gave him a lot of bounties because he chose to stick to the religion. By deeds, subhanallah. By deeds, subhanallah. And Bilal al-Rabah radiallahu anhu, who was Bilal al-Rabah? He was a slave. He was a slave. The Quraysh used to treat him like a very lowly person. Not like a second citizen, maybe like a 10th citizen. Like if the Quraysh told him, do this and do that, he had to do it. He had to do any kind of menial work that was given to him. That was Bilal ibn Rabah radiallahu anhu. But after he came to Islam, you know how he died? He died being the governor of Damascus. He died being the governor of Damascus. Allah gave them the dunya in their hands because they stick to the religion of Islam. Because they stick to the religion of Islam. If you stick to the halal, Allah will strengthen you. Allah will strengthen you. Another contemporary example is PC Mustafa. How many of you know this person? PC Mustafa. Anyone know PC Mustafa? Now, PC Mustafa, his story is actually very amazing. His story is very amazing. Now, PC Mustafa Sahib, he was a businessman and he started out on his business. And, he had to face a lot of challenges. He had to face a lot of losses in his business. And his business was very tight. Like it was getting into a really, really tight area. And like his business is crumbling. Like he was in a very desperate situation. Like he's very in need of money. Very in need of money. Now, one day, a bar company, like a very big bar company, comes to him. I'm basically, summarizing the entire story, all right? I'm not giving you the entire story. I'm just summarizing the story so that we don't lose time. So a big bar company comes to him and says, we have a lot of bars. If you just make the snacks for the bar, we're not asking you to make alcohol. We're not asking you to make anything, haram, but we're just asking you to make, the snacks for the bar. We'll give you like crores and crores of rupees. Like this could have solved all his problems. And he was in a very desperate situation. He had a choice here to make. Either he could stop them, like he could tell them no, and make a huge loss. Make a huge loss of crores of rupees. That could have literally saved his life. But on the other hand, you know what he did? He said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to supply to these bar companies. Even though he was in dire need of money, he said, no, I'm not going to choose that haram path. But you know what Allah gave him? Today he's one of the most wealthiest people in Kerala. And his company, ID Fresh, it has turnover of crores and crores of rupees. Allah gave him that because he chose to stick to the principles of Islam. To the principles of Islam. If you stick to the principles of Islam, Allah will give you a lot more. And this doesn't mean it's all going to be materialistic. For some people, Allah will not give them materialistic success, but it may be immaterial success. It may be success in their family life. It may be success like in their mentality, having peace and tranquility. Allah will give you something more if you stay away from the haram. If you stay away from the haram. If you stood away from watching that haram, Allah will give you something that is much, much better, my brother and my sister. If you stood away from that haram relationship, and I know it's going to be very hard for you, but if you stood away from it, Allah will give you someone who is much, much better. Allah will give you someone who is much, much better. If you stay away from doing that haram job, Allah will give you a job that is much, much better. And always understand this. If you stick to the halal, Allah will strengthen you. Allah will strengthen you. In tansurullaha yansurukum wa yuthabbit aqdamakum. In tansurullaha yansurukum. If you help Allah, Allah will help you. Allah will be there with you. Wa yuthabbit aqdamakum, and will make your legs firm on His path. He'll strengthen you. And we see the examples of this again and again and again and again across history. But the sad reality is a lot of people still don't understand this. And this is the secret of success. We got to really, really clearly, imbibe this fact. If you need Allah with you, stick to the halal. If you, do haram, Allah will not accept your dua. Allah will not be there with you. And if Allah is not there with you, regardless of who is there with you, even if the presidents of large corporate companies are there with you, even if the governors and the prime ministers and the presidents of countries are with you, it's not going to be of any help to you. Allahumma la manja lima a'tayta wa la mu'ti lima mana'ta wa la yanfa'u dhal jadd minkal jadd. If Allah wishes to give you something, and if the whole world opposes you, do you think you're not going to get it? No, you're still going to get it. But if the entire world wanted to give you something, but Allah decided not for you to receive it, do you think you're going to get it? What do you think? Are you going to get it? No, you're not going to get it. Even if the entire world tries to give it to you, you are not going to get it. And that is a universal rule. That is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has built the universe. Our religion is beautiful, my dear brothers and sisters. Our religion is beautiful. Our religion gives you a clear-cut structure. Our religion is a guidance. Why? To actually help you develop, to help you succeed in this life and in the akhirah. To bring mankind min al-dhulumati ila nur. From darkness to light. So always understand this. Even if sometimes you don't understand why some things are haram or why some things are halal, just accept it. Trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If your mother told you something, wouldn't you trust her? Obviously you would trust her. Why? Because you know that she loves you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you 100 times more. And why wouldn't you trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why then wouldn't you trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? A question that we need to ask ourselves, and we need to introspect about the quality of our iman. If you are having constant doubts about why this is haram and why this is halal, why this is like that and why this is like that, why Islam like this and why Islam is like that, just go back and read your aqidah. Just go back and make sure that the quality of the iman that you have in your heart is pure. Just build a concrete base about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and what the Holy Quran is, and who the prophets are. And after that, everything will start making sense to you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. Before we end, there's a very good news for you guys. And that is this. We are going to be launching a Hifl project under COJ, inshallah. Is going to provide the opportunity with a clear-cut structure, with a clear-cut manhaj, with a clear-cut methodology for you to memorize the Holy Quran. It's going to be a beautiful opportunity, inshallah. As brothers and sisters, we are going to be starting on this journey of transversing the final book or the final word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us together, inshallah. More information with regards to this will be given in the groups. The updates will be provided, and you're going to be having a special session, to inaugurate this. And it's actually based on a clear-cut structure. The problem is a lot of people that try to memorize the Quran, they fail because of two reasons. Number one is not because of not having a clear-cut structure. There's a clear-cut methodology of how to memorize, like how many pages you need to read, to do the revision. And don't worry, this is not going to be very hard on you. We'll just be focusing on memorizing maybe 2 ayats per day or 1 ayah per day with 3 ayah per day. We'll be reading tafsir. It's going to be a beautiful journey, inshallah. It's going to be a beautiful journey, inshallah. So one of the reasons why people fail on this journey is because of not having a clear-cut methodology. The second reason is because of what? Is because of lack of consistency. A lot of people, they start on this journey, but they just drop out. They just drop out. And if you don't want to drop out, like if you don't want to stop on this journey, if you don't want to fail, then you got to have friends. And COJ is the best friendship you'll get on this journey. Like brothers and sisters who bonded with you for the sake of deen, right? So inshallah, we'll be moving on this journey together. And there are going to be 3 levels. So the people who are who are just starting on this journey, like who want to first focus on Juz' Amma, like you can start with that, inshallah. For the people who are on the intermediate level, you can start out on, a bit more higher, or a bit more advanced surah. And the people who are on the advanced level, like who has already memorized a lot of surahs and ajza, they can start with a much bigger surah, inshallah. So there are going to be 3 levels. A deeper understanding of this will be given in the upcoming years. And just to understand that this is not being paid, like you're not going to be paid for this. I mean, like you don't need to pay for this. There's this facility that is being provided to you. It's all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I want each and every one of you to remember the coordinators of COJ who have worked really hard to build up the methodology, to keep, working day and night to get the system running. All right. So keep them in your prayers. This is very, very, very important. Very, very important. Inshallah, with that, we come to the conclusion of our session. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the power to stick to the haram, stick to the halal and stay away from the haram, regardless of what the situation is. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength to stand up and say, in front of our colleagues and in front of our friends, that I am not going to do that. I'm not going to do that, regardless of how much you guys insult me, because to me, what matters the most is my akhirah. What matters the most is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my Lord, says to me. So we got to have that strength. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all that strength and that ability. Barakumullahu feekum. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا إننا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك وحب عمل يقرب إلى حبك. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Barakallah feek for the session. Now I'll call upon Brother Abdul Rahman for the conclusion talk. Over to you.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I'd like to thank Sister Fadia for the moderation, Sister Dina for the Quran, and Sister Rajwa for the introduction. And I'd really like to thank Wafi from the bottom of our hearts for providing us with this wonderful session. Let's make sure that we take away something from this session and we Am I audible right now? Sorry for that. I'm still audible, right? Sorry for that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Firstly, I would like to thank Sister Fadia for the moderation, Sister Dina for the Qiraat, Sister Rajwa for the introduction, and finally, Wafika for the wonderful session that he provided us with. Let's make sure that we do not walk away from the session just hearing it was not an entertainment session. This is not a session where you came in to feel good. Rather, this is a session that we have put in the time. So let's make sure that we walk away with something. So make sure to post the audio task in the group and share your perspective, what you understood from this session, so that